webinar and forget to put that little recording sign. I always forget. So, hi everyone. My name is Emily Desjardins. I'm one of the UDL AT content leads with Open Access, and with me is the very wonderful Mr. Fred Cochran.
Hi,
He is
everyone.
he's the UDL coordinator from San Joaquin County Office of Education and works with the Cecil project. And we're so excited to have him. Let's go
Thank
to the
you.
next slide. So today's webinar and all of the next 3 sessions, this whole webinar series is going to be brought to you by 3 of the statewide system support partners, including Open Access, Desired Results Access Project, and Cal Bloom. So all 3 of us are part of the California statewide system of support. There's information about the California statewide system of support, as well as all 3 of our projects on the home base document. But basically all 3 of our projects work to support schools and districts across the state of California by providing free resources and support in our own unique ways. So if you're interested in learning information, you can find that on our home base document. And then over the course of this series, you'll hear a little bit about each of our projects, one bit at a time. And so today we're going to share just a tiny bit about the Open Access Project. We could go to the next slide. Oh, before we get to that though, I will share a little bit about our scope and sequence over the next 4 sessions. So today's our very first session. We're going to be doing just a brief foundational concepts overview of universal design for learning. During our second session on February 17th, same time, we're going to be focusing on just a foundational overview of what is LUDIA and things you might be able to use LUDIA to do, which is great. Our third session is going to be March 3rd, and we're going to focus more on utilizing LUDIA to analyze those DRDP reports. And then session 4 is going to be on March 10th, and that will be focused on that implementation of LUDIA to really support that lesson design. And LUDIA really is a tool that can be used across grade levels, ages, but really in this webinar, we're going to focus mostly on early childhood with our examples, but really, again, this can be applied to anything. Let's go to that next slide. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about Desired Results Access Project and Cal Bloom in future sessions, but today we just want to do a quick highlight of Open Access. So again, we are one of the statewide systems of support, just like Cal Bloom and DRDP, but we really focus on providing professional development, training and coaching in schools across California, county offices of education, SELPAs, etc., specifically focusing on universal design for learning, augmentative and alternative communication, and assistive technology, because we really truly believe that when all 3 of those things are implemented in classrooms, that all students can participate and access within these inclusive settings. And so if you're interested in learning more, our Open Access website is also linked on the home base. We have our flyer here as well, and also feel free to reach out. Our contact information is in this as well. So at Open Access, we do have an accessibility promise, and we really try to do our best to make sure that all of our presentations and resources are accessible as possible. So some things you might see today are some simple backgrounds with high contrast text. When possible, we like to have digital and print materials available. So please feel free to print out anything on that home base document if it's easier for you to access. We have our shortened links and QR codes, and as you'll see in the chat, we've got those that home base document dropped there, and you can also access from this QR code or tiny URL. We use alt texts for images to support screen readers, and then we really do our best to try to provide examples, non-examples, and then encourage that participation. And I know that can be a barrier virtually, but we will do our best today for that. So our hopeful outcomes for this session are really going to be that by the end of today, all of the participants here really understand those key foundational concepts of UDL, which are really focused on that learner variability and barriers in the learning environment. Participants will have an opportunity to really examine the neuroscience, which is underlying in that UDL framework. We'll explore this concept of firm goals, flexible means as a core UDL principle and lesson design strategy. And then we'll have some time to observe a UDL lesson in practice. So This is just the next slide kind of gives another overview of what our learning objectives are, a different visual representation, but we're going to start with that overview and foundational concepts, then dive into those firm goals, flexible means, and then kind of look at what does UDL look like in action. So we always like to start with an inclusive welcome in everything we do. We did not invent this term at all. This is one of the Castle signature practices, which is the collaborative for social emotional learning. And the idea behind an inclusive welcome is if we can start any learning opportunity with a quick few minutes to check in and allow people to have conversations or answer in a way that works best for them, that engagement can increase. And so this is something we can do in classrooms with our tiniest of learners, all the way up through college and adult learners. So it's just a quick strategy. So today I'm going to ask you guys in the chat to share a little bit about your name, your role, what brings you here today. Hopefully we'll have you guys for the next 4 sessions. That would be great. But if you can only come to some, that's fine too. Be nice to get to know you. And then after we've introduced ourselves, I've got a couple of quick prompts that I'm going to pop into, or it will be on the next couple of slides, but it's really checking in with you a little bit about where you are with UDL. So our first question is, when you think about Universal Design for Learning or UDL, which statement feels the most accurate for you? I'm very familiar with UDL and have used it before. 1, I have heard of UDL, but I'm still kind of figuring it out. I am brand new to UDL. I'm curious, excited to learn more, and I am just not sure what to expect. Which one of those? Go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. Name, role, what brought you here today, and then maybe just a quick number of where we're at right now.
I'm not able to access my chat.
Oh, I'd love it. Unmute. Please share. I would love that.
The hurt finger.
Oh, well, my name's Eric Water. Anyway, I'm pointing in elementary school.
Hi, Eric. It's nice to meet you. Okay, I'm seeing some 2s in the chat. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourselves. I've got a 4. I love it. Curiosity, excitement. I'm here for it. I love it. We're still interested, figuring it out. I love it. Got some 3s, got some 1s. Love it. For those of you that are 1s, my hope is that you take one new gem or nugget today. Maybe a new, this is really going to be overview, so I'm sure you know this, but hopefully you get some sort of a resource. I love it. I got a couple 5s, a 1 and a 4, 1s, 2s, 3. We're all over the place, and I love it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. We're so excited to have you here. All right, so our second question is, in a short word or phrase, how would you describe your relationship with UDL right now? And this could be maybe a feeling, it could be a level of experience, it could be maybe a prediction of what you think UDL might be. If you're a 1 and you're like, I have no idea what to expect. So some examples might be, I'm feeling interested and hopeful, or this is brand new and I have no idea what to expect, or I wonder if UDL has something to do with inclusion. I don't know. I'm not feeding you that answer. No.
Emily,
Ooh.
they may be on their first date.
Oh, I love that, Fred.
Your
Yes, your
first date
first
with UDL.
UDL
Could
date.
be
I
your
love
date.
that. Reagan said, I feel like an explorer. I love that. Fred, I'm going to use that. Are you on your first UDL date? I love that.
Yeah. I've had a few dates now, but yes, definitely.
I love it. New and curious. Courtney's feeling hopeful and excited to see how this can grow our district's conversations around inclusionary practices moving forward in our TK classes. Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. Refining my relationship with UDL. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate your participation. I appreciate Rosa, thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing. So thank you guys so much. I am going to pass the next bit of slides off to the wonderful Fred Cochran. Take it away, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. So great to be with everyone. So, yes, that was a great segue into where you all are in your relationship with UDL. But what we're going to talk about right now, and want to know that we want to have fun today. We want to experience some joy in this experience together, because it's meant to be and engaging experience. So when we're looking at UDL, things that UDL is not, we want to be sure it's not a curriculum, it's not a program, or it's just not another thing to do. So we really want to look at UDL as being this teaching framework based in the learning sciences. And knowing that that's grounded in research helps us to understand that we can use this framework to develop and create flexible opportunities for students to learn in the environment that they're in. And in the same time, we're also embracing variability. We want to minimize barriers and help develop learner agency for all students. So speaking about variability, one thing I learned about UDL is that variability isn't just about your classroom and your students. It's about adults. It's about everyone. It's about our human existence. We're all experience variability, and we're all unique learners. And so when we think about our own personal experiences, we can translate into the classroom environment as well. When we think about our students, they have individual strengths and preferences and challenges. They also, we need to know different ways that we can support the variability that exists in the classroom and provide different ways to access opportunities for students so that they can learn the best way they can. And then with that, we think about what barriers are there in the environment that's providing a roadblock for students. So we have to identify barriers in order to create flexible learning environments, pardon me, that support this variability. So I said it was based on research, and here we go. The neuroscience behind this is amazing. Think about our brains. Our brains are so complex. They're webs of integrated and overlapping networks. And like fingerprints, think about this. No two brains are alike. And I often think about this because I have twin daughters, and I often thought they just act the same all the time. And it took me forever to understand that they were not alike in that way that they thought. It's a big mind shift for me. But learners do not have an isolated style, but instead they rely on many parts of the brain working together. And that variability exists between students, but also within students in different contexts. And that's important to take note of. Check out that image. I mean, that is an awesome image of our brain working here, the complex webs that exist. So, what's behind this research? Well, what's great about this is understanding that there are three networks that UDL is organized into. You have the affective network, the Y, that's where engagement takes place. You can see that in the graphic here where the green is, and it of course connects to that principle of engagement. The recognition network, the what of learning, you see that as being our purple area, the what. And then we have the strategic network, the how of learning, where action and expression takes place. So I think this graphic really helps us understand that our brain is working, and sometimes all these things are connected together because we're not just always in engagement, no, we're not always in representation or action expression. They just crosswalk all over the place. So it's really important to keep that in mind of how the brain is functioning when we're learning. And then some of those highlights of neuroscience. So in order for students to learn, they need to be engaged. I think we all can testify to that. They need to be able to perceive the information, and they need to be able to demonstrate their learning. And that can look different, right, in different ways. So learning is emotional work. Emotional intention. It determines which information the brain processes and which neural connections are strengthened. And something I would just want to add to that is if you remember the things that you are passionate about, the things that you learned about in your studies and your learning experiences, those emotional connections are the ones that you always remember. And they're the ones that may kind of give you the opportunity to see the path you need to go, because emotion has such an important piece of how we process information and how it makes us feel. And when you feel emotionally attached to your learning, that's what we're looking for, right? So I'm going to turn it back to Emily, but I'll be back in a little bit.
Thanks, Fred. So, I would like to share an image of what this framework actually looks like, and my hope is very much not to overwhelm you with this information. So if looking at this feels overwhelming, it's okay. We can focus on variability, barriers, and some other pieces of it, but I do want to make sure to show you just what these guidelines actually look like. So, as Fred was talking about, the neuroscience behind UDL is really this, and it sounds really basic, right? In order for us to learn, we need to be engaged, we need to be able to perceive, and we need to be able to show our understanding. And so the guidelines are divided up into these three overarching principles. And the idea is that because all of us learn differently, we know that there's going to need to be a variety of ways that we allow for our learners to engage, perceive, and show what they know. And so this is divided up into designing multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. So underneath each of these principles, you're going to find 3 guidelines, or 9 total. They're divided in rows. At the top, you'll see access, and then you'll see support, and then you'll see executive function. And I know this probably looks really small on a slide, but it is also linked in the home base document, so you can check it out as well. And then under each of these guidelines are a list of considerations. Another way to think about this is that if the guideline is a potential problem, then the considerations underneath are a solution. So for example, I always like to highlight this one. Under the engagement strand, if you look at the second one, it says design options for sustaining effort and persistence. And so if you happen to have a student in your class that you're like, oh my gosh, we have no effort and persistence, it is not working. Underneath it, you're going to see a specific list of strategies that are based in neuroscience and are specific ways that we as humans are going to be able to sustain effort and persistence. And what you'll notice under there is a lot of it is about being part of a learning community and really understanding what your expectations are underneath there. So there's lots of specifics in there, but I will leave you with this concept of just a problem and a solution. And again, I promise we'll kind of learn more tidbits as we go along, but this is just kind of an overview of what those specific guidelines look like. And a phrase that I like to say to myself is I think of the considerations themselves as like 36 ways that humans learn best. And any one of those considerations is a great strategy, a best practice strategy. And also many of these you're already doing because again, this is best practice of how humans learn. And therefore you're already doing it in your class in lots of ways. And there also might be some new ways in there too. And then the overarching goal within UDL is to develop learner agency. And for our littlest friends, this is so important. There's nothing more exciting to me than a little guy in a classroom getting all the materials they need all by themselves. They know where to access their markers and crayons and paper and they go and get it. There's nothing cuter than, a 3-year-old who's pouring drinks into a cup at snack time, and so important for them to really have that ability to practice skills and to feel part of a community and feel confident and competent. And those are important things for our littlest guys. And again, you know that. I know you know that because you're in the classroom doing the things. We'll go to the next slide. So what I also want to do is just because these 36 strategies can be overwhelming, the framework itself can be really overwhelming. But if we look at there's some overlap too. So if we look at these and really think about what does the science tell us about how humans engage, right? We need clear goals. We need to know what the heck it is we're supposed to be doing in order to do a task. We need some choice in learning. And options can look like a lot of different things. And I promise we'll talk about that later. They can be very, very small. They can be bigger, but choice is really important. We absolutely need to feel part of a community. We need to have a connection with those we are learning with. And of course, that goes back to also feeling safe and being able to take those risks. We need to be able to have some support, tools and scaffolds that allow us to understand the task, right? And then two really important things, we need constructive feedback, and then we also need time to reflect. And of course, 3-year-old reflection is a little different than grown-up reflection, but taking that time to really think about what did we learn today? What went well today? What was something that was a powerful thing for help me. So when we're looking in the representation principle on the next slide, the science really shows us that our brains need multiple ways to perceive materials. Having that variety of methods, like if someone's just talking at you all day, it's not quite as effective as if there's visuals, if there's time for me to practice with my hands on as well, if there's a way for me to see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, try it, all of those things. Those are going to help me learn, right? Having an opportunity to experience diverse perspectives, including those cultures, ideas, experiences. And a very simple way for doing that is letting children share their thoughts and opinions when you're doing work as a class, because that in itself is sharing diverse perspectives. As learners, we really need explicit connections. We need that time to activate prior knowledge and connect ideas. And again, that reflection on learning. And then finally, of course, that having that respect for different thinking. Like it's not only is it okay if you learn differently, it's awesome that you learn differently because we all learn differently. How awesome is that? Right? And so in that next section on action and expression, the research really says that, and again, you're seeing less and less examples because there is a lot of overlap between engagement, representation, and action and expression. But really having time for students to have multiple ways to show their learning, options for them to demonstrate their learning, having access to a variety of tools, and then again, having like a really clear understanding of feedback and the assessment plan. That is absolutely key. So ultimately, really the overall goal within UDL is to create opportunities for learner agency for our students. So learner agency really refers to that ability of students to take ownership of their learning, to make choices, and have a voice in the educational process. And that can be as very simple as little guys having time to turn and talk, for them to share their opinions, their thoughts, their ideas. That's really, really powerful, but then also years, of course, as well, too. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you an image that you've probably seen in some form or another at some point. So in that very first image, I'm sure we've seen the first two images, I think, pretty often. So I'm going to offer a third option to just kind of put in that UDL lens. So of course, in that first option, everyone gets the same. I'm going on a limb and say, I think we've moved away from that. That's my deep hope, is we've moved away from that. That second image is really, it's differentiation and action, right? Every student is getting what they need to access the field in the same way. And there's nothing wrong with differentiation. It's an important strategy, but I would say that is much more of a tier 2 strategy than a tier 1 strategy, right? Because there's nothing harder than trying to make sure everybody gets something different. The third image is a really good representation of what UDL can be, and that is teacher has, let's say, the goal for every student to be able to see the field. Let's call that the firm goal. This teacher has removed the barrier of the fence itself. Now, all three of those students are accessing a view of the field in a slightly different way, right? The youngest student is probably peeping through the hole. The middle student probably has the fence kind of on their chin, which might be bothering them a little. And then the third seems to have the first one has a pretty good view. However, the teacher has provided a resource, a tool on the side, and if students would like a tool to see it better, even the student that can see it clearly, maybe wants to get a little taller, nothing wrong with that. And so their students really have the agency to choose the tool to support their need. And it really puts that ownership on the student. And of course, the teacher has taught those students how to use that tool and really had that good conversation about what students need. Like that is a huge part of it, is to teach them how to use the tools, of course. But this is kind of an image that really shows, again, removing that barrier, providing some options and supports, and then allowing students to make that choice for themselves. And I know particularly with early childhood, that's a little daunting, but just with practice and experience and clear expectations, I promise it can happen. I'm actually sitting at one of our school sites right now, and we just specifically were walking around looking in kindergarten classes and just blown away by the agency that was there, which was really fun. So, and on that next slide, agency really, really comes from our learners knowing what engages them, what tools help them perceive and understand, and then how to organize and communicate their learning. And again, that doesn't happen on accident. It's just that repetition and practice over again. So this is a lot of information, and this is exactly what the research says. We can't just sit and listen. I'm sorry. It's the barrier of virtual. So I am going to just take a little minute to pause and let's just sit, reflect for a minute. I would love to hear either from unmuting or in the chat. What do you notice? What do you wonder so far? What seems new? What seems familiar? What are you feeling about UDL? Feel free to unmute, drop into the chat, share. I just love to do a little check-in. How are we feeling? And we'll wait a minute, but also if everyone's like, just keep going, it's fine. I don't need to reflect. That's fine too. I'll give it a minute though. I'm working on my wait time.
You know what I often experience when I do something like this and do a notice and wonder is there's always something that I didn't know. I always pick up something new. And even though I say, oh, I'm pretty familiar with the guidelines, but there's always something that sparks my attention and say, oh, I'm curious about that. So hopefully that's driving some curiosity with you guys too. So I noticed Christina just posted the overarching goal of student agency is to be purposeful and intentional. Great. Powerful. Got it. Super.
I love that.
I like learning new vocabulary.
I love it. Okay. Sorry. Apparently my camera was breaking up. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully it's better now. Oh, I like the emphasis of student agency. Awesome. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Mhm.
So we're going to move along into our learning journey here and really explore this idea of firm goals, flexible means. I think sometimes if we stay too long in this foundational concepts and we don't go to something tangible, people are like, I don't know, but how do you do this? And so our hope with introducing firm goals, flexible means is that we can look at this and kind of go, okay, this is a strategy I can take away. On the next slide, I'm going to show you so there are many, many barriers that our learners might encounter. And the idea is that, our environments are full of barriers and that barriers can be contextual. So I like to use this analogy of, have you guys ever heard of these? There was like probably 10 years ago, there was this really big fad where in New York City, they were having these restaurants that were completely dark. And it was like a sensory experience where you would go in and it'd be totally dark, but it was like you could feel your food, smell it, taste it, but you weren't using your eyes at all. And this was an enormous barrier for servers who had the ability to see. So they started hiring people who were blind because it was like, oh, I already don't see. I already know how to navigate spaces in challenging circumstances. So what is a barrier in an environment for some can actually be this wonderful strength in another. So I like to think of that analogy when I'm thinking about barriers in the environment. So this is one resource, and I've linked it here, and then it's also in the home base as well if you'd like to explore it. But it's some specific barriers that learners can experience when it comes to barriers to engagement, barriers to representation, and barriers to action and expression. And again, we're thinking about, are they engaging? Are they perceiving? And are they able to show what they know? So this is kind of a resource to look at for later. But one strategy that exists to remove barriers is this concept of firm goals, flexible means. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy on the next slide. Okay, let's say I decide I am going to make a New Year's resolution. Okay, I decide I need to do more sit-ups. Okay, my goal is I will do more sit-ups. But if I really sit and think about this, it doesn't really have a why. Like, why am I doing this? Okay, so I think about it for a minute and I think, okay, actually, I would like to do more sit-ups in order to increase my core strength. Heavens knows we need to do that. Yep, core strength's important. Okay. And then when I look at it a little deeper, I can actually think to myself, you know what? If my real goal were to increase my core strength, doing sit-ups could actually be quite limiting to my overall goal. Number one, I'm going to get bored if every day all I'm doing is sit-ups. Number two, the parts of my core that I'm doing sit-ups with over and over and over is going to get really sore, and then other parts of my core are not even going to get used. But if instead I think about 10, 15 different strategies that I can use to increase my core strength, then depending on how I'm feeling, depending on my interest, depending on a whole number of things, I can choose something else in order to increase my core strength. So this idea of, okay, if I were to create this firm goal, I will increase my core strength and then create some flexible options. So this is more of a, a hypothetical version, but I do want to share what this could look like in the classroom as well. But first I want to highlight, sorry, on the next slide. This is really truly not about lowering standards, but clarifying them. Yes, we absolutely want to teach reading, writing, math, or in the case of our smallest friends, we want to teach them how to be kind friends. We want to teach them how to be able to use scissors. We want to teach them to be able to look each other in the eye, but trying to do that all at once is really daunting. And so when we can take those very specific goals and create some flexible means around meeting them, we can allow our students really to show a lot more of what they know. So I'm going to show you a little example from a classroom, and Fred has done just a beautiful job kind of taking this and dividing it up. So let's say the lesson goal is students will draw a picture of their family and verbally describe it. Okay. There's a few different things that are like, what is the why in this? Lori, if you wouldn't mind clicking. So like there's a few things that could be what's the why. The first one could be maybe we're trying to figure out what a family is. Maybe it's to understand a family. And then would you mind clicking it again? Maybe it's to draw a picture. And then maybe there's even a third one. Maybe it's to be able to describe something, right? So this goal is packed with quite a bit. And if we take this and actually divide it up, we can create some flexible ways for our learners to meet these goals. So a new lesson goal could be students will demonstrate understanding of who they consider part of their family. Okay, some strategies, some different ways they might be able to do that. There's going to be a ton of different ways. So some flexible ways is maybe they're able to point to or choose photos or picture cards. Maybe they're able to place people figures into a family scene. Maybe they're acting out family roles with dolls or puppets. Maybe they're selecting images on a board or a tablet, for some of our students with AAC devices. Maybe they're building family using blocks or loose parts. But what we're doing here is we're trying to reduce some very specific barriers. We're taking away the barrier of maybe some fine motor skills that with drawing that are not there yet, maybe. We're maybe taking away that barrier of some limited expressive language. We're taking away that barrier of maybe how cultural, like there's going to be a lot of differences about what family looks like in different cultures. And then maybe that memory or recall demands when they're asked to explain is not there. So if we can really create these targeted lessons, we're going to be able to see a lot more of what our students are able to do. So we could also change the lesson goal and instead focus on students will communicate an idea, preference, or choice. Lots of different things we could do here, right? So some of the barriers we might want to remove. On the next slide, sorry. Some of the other barriers that we could reduce here is that, maybe they fully don't understand this concept of what a family is yet, or maybe don't have the language, the vocabulary for it, but that's looking specifically at family. And this is going to let them show how they communicate in a variety of ways on different ideas or preferences, right? So some flexible ways might be they have topic of choice or options of topics. They could use spoken words, short phrases. Maybe they could use gestures, signs, AAC. They could answer yes or no questions. They could have choice-based questions. They could label or request picture symbols. They could share through a recorded message or maybe a partner-assisted response. There's so many different ways we could do this. And I know you can make this flexible for your own environment and your own students. So this is really just an example, but some of the barriers we're reducing here are that prior knowledge about family, really that content-based language demands, because there's a lot we're asking of students when it comes to when they're sharing information about like vocabulary information. They have to know a lot to be able to share information about content. Anxiety about giving a right answer. Maybe that's speech production or processing differences, right? So we can also change the focus, last one, I promise, to students will represent their ideas using materials or tools. And some ways that we might create some flexible means for them could be maybe they draw, paint, or color freely. Maybe they use stickers, stamps, or collage materials. Maybe they build or shape with Play-Doh blocks or magnetic tiles. They arrange pre-drawn shapes or figures. Maybe they use digital drag and drop or drawing app. So like, as you can see, there's a lot of barriers we're removing here for our students, right? Those language demands that really aren't related to that motor skill development, maybe that background knowledge about family, the pressure to represent something maybe accurately. This kind of allows them to do something a little more conceptually. So, again, these are just examples and you know your students, but the really key component to Firm Goals Flexible Means is thinking about what barriers are getting in the way of my students being able to show their knowledge, and what are some flexible ways I can ask them that take the barrier away, but also keep that core goal the same, right? The lesson goal is going to remain the same for all students. So on the next slide, you can see, again, a choice assignment really has that same learning goal for all students. It allows for flexibility in how students are showing their understanding and achieving that learning goal, right? This is one I always like to highlight because teachers go like, but I don't want that to be a choice. Great, you get to choose the choices. That always sounds funny to say, but teachers get to decide what choices are offered. That is absolutely yours. And the truth of the matter is every teacher has a different, because we're all variable, back to that variability, teachers are variable too. And we all have a different tolerance of what we want in our classroom or what, that's great. Make it your own. The idea is removing barriers, creating choices that make sense for your environment, your students, your classroom, right? One of the pieces that choice does for our students, and again, our earliest learners, this is really, really fun for them. Fun and challenging, both things. It forces our students to reflect and think, okay, what choice feels most natural for me? Which choice is the best way for me to show what I've learned? How am I going to be able to do this? And it really can increase that engagement and allow us to really accurately see what our students know. So one of the things that we get asked a lot, because, creating a different project or a different, there's so many different ways we can create choice, right? In flexible seating, in the classroom, which partner we work with, which group we work with, or whether we do partner group or by ourselves, all those things. But one of the things that often comes up, because there's always going to be things where content can't be changed. And so I like to just highlight this and plant this seed that you can always think about the response format. Is this handwritten? Is this typed? I know our early friends are probably not doing typing, but these are just some examples. Speech to text, audio recording, verbal to teacher. Sometimes if nothing else is working and we're just not in this other, maybe just sitting and having a conversation one-on-one can get you the information you need. Creating a video response, again, typically not for our earliest learners, but some of our older students having the option of a video presentation instead of doing a presentation in front of a lot of students can help remove that anxiety and actually allow them to show what they know. So just planting that seed of when you can't change the content, think about the format and get as creative as you want. So I am going to pass this along back to Fred, and we're going to dive into some UDL in action.
Yes, so thank you, Emily. That was great information you shared. So now let's look at UDL in action. And this is something I think Emily mentioned this earlier. Educators want to know, what does this look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And we want to bring that experience to you. But we also want to explain that UDL is when we think of variability, it is unique. And we think about how UDL appears in a classroom isn't a cookie cutter approach. It can look in many different ways depending upon the personality of the teacher, the classroom environment, and how students are engaged in their learning. We wanted to give you access to a way of looking at evidence of UDL implementation here. It's broken down by the 3 guidelines. And when you are observing a lesson, or maybe you're observing a peer that is teaching, some things that you might be looking for are those lesson goals or how choice is being offered. And this kind of gives you what we call a checklist, even though we don't always like the term checklist, but it's nice to be able to say, I see it there, I see it here. And in other ways, we don't want to say that we've done it just because we checked it off. We want to say that it's visible, and we can experience it, and we can see the change in our students. So this is a way for you to kind of document what you see in here. And what we're going to do today is share a video with you. And these videos are called UDL in Action, and they were actually made when the grant that I work under, called the California Coalition for Inclusive Learning, the first phase of the grant, we were able to do a series of videos. And we have videos ranging from the kindergarten age group all the way through to the high school level. And so what we want to do today is share this video with you, and make some notes on what do you see, what questions might you have, and then we'll come back together and we'll share some of those observations with each other.
Morning routine is now. Good job. Go Noodle is now. All right, it is time for Writer's Workshop. You guys are kind of looking like writers right now. I know you're writers. Is it okay if I share your wonderful story? Miriam, when you went to Egypt, you talked about how your plane ride was really, really long. And you said that it was exhausting, right? So boys and girls, this is beautiful writing. And I want you to share the writing with the world. But there are some things that I know you can do to make your writing even better. And you've been practicing it. All right, ready? We're going to do 1 minute on the board. Turn and talk. What do you need to make your writing easy? Go ahead. All right, who thinks they can share with the group what we can do to make our writing even better and easy to read? A dot to end our thought? Let me see if look at that, Lily. I need your help, though. Go ahead and put it with the orange on the orange chart. What? Uppercase letters? Let me see if I have that. Capital letters. Andrea, come on up. Good thinking. You know how to make your writing even better. Go ahead and put it on the chart. There's more? These things should be used, all of these skills, in all of our writing. In fact, I have a story I wrote. But the problem is, I don't think I made this very easy to read. I made each of you your own little charts on how to make writing easy. You can work by yourself to take my writing and fix it for me. And guess what? You can use a highlighter or a black pen to fix my mistakes. So if you see Mrs. Stibbert did not put a capital letter, go ahead and fix my mistake. Now, if you're not ready to work by yourself, you can work with a partner. You and a partner can talk about my writing and how I can make it easier to read. And if you think that you would do better working with a group of friends, you can do that as well. So you can circle it or highlight it. Good job. Very good.
That way you know what to write next.
That's right. Now look at this word right here. Win a. You noticed it. So you can circle it or highlight it. Good job.
I did it.
Can you stand up with your paper and your chart and your clipboard and come to the carpet? All right, we're going to start following the group plan. Here is your job. You can look up here as I read my story, or look at the paper you have in front of you if you'd rather look at your own paper. Landed on the chart paper. Oops, period. A dot to end my thought. Yep, that was what I was missing. I have more? Now you try it. Your job as awesome Room A writers is to do with your own stories what you helped Miss Stibbard do with hers. You're going to decide what your story is going to be. Then you're going to use your brand new charts to say, oh, did I put a period at the end of my sentence? Okay, now we're going to grab your writer's perspective. You forgot a bunch of spaces. I've done that too. You forgot a bunch of periods. I've done that. You're saying all these things you're noticing. Now you get to fix it. So decide what you're going to do. Are you going to stay on the carpet and fix your writing? Are you going to go to your desk and fix your writing? Are you going to fix it with a partner? Perfect. Oh, look, I see you added a period. Good job.
What colors inside the box? What did I do wrong? Yes. Yes. Want to play?
All right, did you fix your story? Oh, look, I see you added a period. Good job on making your writing easier to read. Keep adding to your story. Water is too cold. You put those in there for me. You know where they go. But the sun. All right. So say I.
This is J. Because those rules. Ask Miss Staples. Okay, Jonathan, your turn.
Can we make this lowercase?
Okay. So, and you'll have access to this video too, and it's located on the home-based document that you have as well. But I know I was making some notes as I was watching the video again, because I've seen it a few times, but it's things that really stood out to me. That this was really a safe environment for kids. Kids were so engaged and excited to learn. And you just got a good feeling about that. And remember what I said earlier, sometimes it's not exactly what you see, it's sometimes what you feel when you're in a classroom to know what students, to see students being engaged. So we'd love to hear from you guys. What are some of the things that you noticed? Some things I'm sure you do already, but thinking about being very intentional about what you do, how could that expand your use of engagement, representation, action, and expression in your classroom?
And I know the video is a little choppy, so I would really encourage you, if you can, watch it on your end, or at least it was choppy on my end. Was it choppy on yours too? It's hard. We're all in different places. Like
Every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the voice can set us think. Yeah, a little bit.
So if you ever want to watch it and go through and not see the choppiness, feel free to do that. But we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Courtney says variety of tools, student voice, choice in those tools. And Megan says, I liked how the teacher gave the children 3 different ways they could work on editing the story. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So many different answers. Thank you.
Yeah. And you all can tell that they've been doing this for a long time. I mean, throughout the years. So it wasn't just a one and done lesson. This is how they do things in their classroom. So I think that's important to know that it's a process and it will happen. And kids want to they want to be their best learner, but we need to give them the tools to do that. Yeah, I'd like that variety of options, collaboration or alone. She was very good at that, expressing that with her kids. Great.
I love it. Thank you guys so much. My very favorite scene in the whole thing is when she has them turn and talk and they point their little fingers towards their partner and then they go. And I'm like, it's just such a clear example of how much time and energy she has spent on creating those clear expectations of what has to happen. And there's so much behind the scenes that happens before they're doing all that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So in our last little few minutes here, we would love to share some extra resources and just kind of give you guys a minute to think about your learning today. But I would love to share some resources if you'd like to dig deeper, specifically in this area of firm goals, flexible means, but also in UDL, all this stuff. So something to read. We have a What is UDL? Big Ideas handout if you want some kind of overview of handout. Katie Novak is a bit of a UDL guru, if you will, but she's an educational consultant, and she has a great article about making firm goals flexible means work in the classroom. At Open Access, we have a podcast, and every episode is focused on interviewing teachers in the classroom, implementing one consideration at a time. There is a particular episode focused on choice, and that is with a TK through fifth grade PE teacher talking about choice, which is great. But and even if you're not teaching PE, and even if those grade levels are not your grade levels, a lot of the concepts about how she thinks about variability and barriers and then the specific choices she creates are in that episode. And I think she does a wonderful job talking about it. Some resources to explore is Fred's baby, we'll call it, Early Childhood UDL Resource Crosswalk. It is a fantastic resource. So many wonderful examples, something to read, something to listen to, and something to watch. All kinds of resources breaking down each consideration specifically for early childhood and UDL. We have an interactive UDL companion that's similar, but not early childhood focused, similar idea. And then finally, our UDL Flip Kit, which is a combination of digital tools and teaching strategies all linked in with Universal Design for Learning. So we really encourage you to explore that, dig a little deeper. And then that will bring us to our intentional close for the day. We talked about how, we always start with an inclusive welcome. We always like to end with an intentional close. And again, it's thinking about just a quick little reflection to help make that brain connection, even as adult learners, just need a minute to think. Thinking about everything you saw and heard, maybe what is one takeaway that you might want to try, an idea, strategy, tool, and action that maybe I'm just going to read an article in the digging deeper. Maybe I'm going to listen to the class. Maybe it's try out firm goals, flexible means in your classroom, anything. And again, feel free to unmute or share in the chat what your one takeaway is going to be. Awesome. Courtney says the UDL guidelines document, a great starting point and reference guide for our work. Daisy's going to dig deeper. I love it. Giving children more options as how they want to, as to how they want to do something. I love it. Christina's going to explore the resources. Great. Thank you guys so much. Share the checklist with mentees as they consider strategies to implement more UDL in the classroom. Awesome. Fabulous. Reference and share UDL implementation practices. Love it. Explore resources. Thank you guys so very much. So in our next session coming up, our second session is next Tuesday, same time, noon to 1, and we'll do a foundational overview of LUDIA, and we're actually going to practice this firm goals flexible means with an activity that's connected to LUDIA, so it'll all connect there. And then again, our session 3 and 4 is going to be really utilizing LUDIA to analyze DRDP reports, and then also that implementation of LUDIA to support lesson design. Awesome. I'm seeing more focus on giving students more options. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. And then finally, we really, really encourage you to take a minute to fill out our feedback survey. We will definitely take this as we go into our next session. So especially before our next session, this is really helpful. Your feedback really helps guide us in our professional development as we're always looking to make things a little better and improve on things. And so that feedback survey is linked in the chat. And then also you can use the QR code or the link in the slide deck as well. but we really encourage you to take a couple minutes to do that learner feedback. And then we'll give you a couple minutes with this survey, but if you want to find out more information about open access, we have a newsletter that gets updated monthly and sent out to you. So if you would like to be on our newsletter list, feel free to sign up there. There is a link in the QR code. And then our website has so many different resources. Please feel free to explore and dig into it all. And then we really do update our social media quite often, so feel free to follow us. We encourage you to follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. We have our Tip Tuesdays, Fact Fridays, all kinds of different resources that we post, and just information about where we are and what trainings we have. And then finally, feel free to reach out with us to me or Fred if you have any questions about anything from today, or you have any questions about upcoming sessions. And we appreciate you all being here so much.
And we do appreciate your feedback because we learn from you guys. So please feel free to do that at any time. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.